You'll never find another love like mine. For those of you know, you know.
And we're rolling. Pop, how you doing?
Son, how are you?
Good to see you, man. We had to hit you guys with the surprise in-person podcast live from Marina Del Rey, California.
In Cali, baby.
Living good out here on the West Coast. Pop came for his annual Memorial Day visit, and we're chilling. So what better way to kick the vacation off? Talk a little Commanders.
Let's do it. Dom and Pop live and in person. Well, not really live when
Yes,
people
sir.
watch this.
But hey, before we get into it, we almost got ahead of ourselves. We're so excited because it's live today. Before we get into it, gotta have a little talk. Pop,
Yes, sir.
I heard we're giving something away.
That's right.
A little free Jayden Daniels jersey for the people. Could you tell them how to enter? Tell them what they got to do?
Well, let's be clear now. It is a raffle. We're raffling off a Jayden Daniels jersey.
One.
Right. To once we hit 500 subs, after we hit 500 subs, as long as we do that before the season kicks off, which we're on pace to do. Thanks for all the additional subscribers we've gained since we've kicked this off. But we got a little ways to go. You can see how many subs you are if you get onto YouTube. But if you're a sub, simply email us to tomandpopgiveaway1@gmail.com.
There it is. So that's Dom and Pop giveaway1@gmail.com. What we need you to do, we need you to press that subscribe button. After you press that subscribe button, we need you to email. Tell us, hey, man, I've subscribed. We've really enjoyed reading through the emails. A lot of people have been saying a lot of really nice things. That's optional, of course, but we love to hear from you guys if you have feedback or anything you like. But leave us your address, leave us your shirt size, and we will randomly select the winner from that pool, and you'll get the jersey. You'll get your free Jayden Daniels jersey. How sweet is that?
It's pretty sweet. That's free.
Doesn't cost you anything, helps the channel, and this is the last chance you'll have to get a Jayden Daniels jersey before his rookie season from Dom and Pop.
That's right.
So you got to get on top of it. And you know what? If you don't get the jersey, you might get a T-shirt. Who knows? We're thinking about sending around some Dom and Pop T-shirts as well. So without further ado, let's get into this thing, Pop.
Let's do it.
We got OTA week 2. This is a classic late May, early June podcast. Not a ton of big highlights to talk about.
I think there are a few interesting things.
But not a ton of big headlines. So a couple just chill things to get into here. We got the JD hype meter, number 1. Teammates and coaches are continuing to rave about Jayden Daniels. So far, the thing that has stuck with me is John Keim. He was on B. Mitch and Finley earlier in the week, and he's talking about this is a kid who by no means looks lost out there. He looks comfortable. He looks where he's supposed to be. He looks like he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. And for the Washington Commanders, that's a hell of an accomplishment, frankly, because we've had guys look lost out there. I mean, we've had 12-year vets look lost out there. We've had 5th-round rookies look lost out there. We've been all over the place. But the one thing that's been consistent, they've all looked pretty lost. Jayden Daniels doesn't look lost. That's a big step.
Yeah, and I think that's the exciting part, right? You use the right word. He looks comfortable. Yeah. He's comfortable in front of the media. He's comfortable in front of his teammates. You know, he's running with the second team right now, and he seems humble enough to understand that he's got to earn his spot. I think it's a little bit of a Dan Quinn philosophy there with the younger guys. We talked about that a little bit last week. But, you know, it's exciting to also hear what some of the vets are saying about him, particularly John Allen talked about how he likes to be the first guy in the building every day, and he can't beat Jayden Daniels into the building. You love to hear that. So the amount of work he's putting in. Internet went a little bit viral with that ball he threw to Jahan Dotson.
Woo!
That was a beauty.
That
really had a couple of really nice throws out there.
Yeah, that was a pretty one. That was one of the nicer passes we've seen. And frankly, this is just a sad statement because it's a pass that happened in May. But that was one of the nicer passers we've seen from a Commanders quarterback in the last few years, honestly.
He seems to love that type of ball, that over the shoulder. Make sure you check it out if you haven't. All you got to do is search that on, social media and you'll find it. But that over-the-shoulder corner ball seems to be a favorite of his, and that's not necessarily an easy throw to hit, but just seems super accurate. And yeah, I think that the type of guy he is, and him impressing his veteran teammates, I think a lot of the guys had really nice things to say about him. So let's hope it keeps trending upward.
Yeah, it's hope things keep going the way they're going. I'm excited. I think one thing that's kind of surprised me for all the reports, his size. The more and more I'm seeing pictures of this guy and I'm seeing him in the pocket, I'm seeing him play, he does not look like he's that slight of a dude. He doesn't look nearly as small as people were making it seem. So that's just kind of not a concern for me at all. You also hear the reports about Lamar slimming down to like 205 pounds, something like that, going into this year.
I think we need to have a little bit of like one of those old school when they used to have those competitions, sprints between Lamar and Jayden. What do you think?
I mean, I think Lamar's winning that for sure, but it's not. I don't think Lamar's losing.
Like they used to call it Superstars or whatever that was called, that old school show.
I don't know. It might have been before my time.
Well, before your time.
But
if you remember Superstars, hit us in the comments.
For sure. So overall, though, you got a number for the hype meter, Pop? Where are you at?
Oh, man, that's a good one. 1 to 10. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, I'm trying to tamper my excitement. I think I'd given a 7 in the past. I'm feeling 8. Maybe it's the California vibes. Maybe it's the sunshine.
There it is.
Maybe it's this beautiful view that you can't see, that we can see out here on the water here. But, yeah, I'm going 8.
There it is. Respect. I'm on 10.
I'm on the 8 car.
I'm on 10. I've been on 10. I'm on 10 for this season. I'm fired up. I'm excited. We got the number 2 overall pick. We might have got the best quarterback in the draft. We got this guy. He got to play 5 years of college ball, trending in the right direction, got better every single year. Last year, wasn't happy with the draft grade that he'd received going into last year, put in the extra work, and where did it get him, Pop? It got him a Heisman Trophy. It got him drafted number 2 overall. It got him in our building surrounded by Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn, Tavita Pritchard, Brian Johnson. That's somebody who doesn't get brought up a lot when we talk about this. Brian Johnson was integral to Jalen Hurts' development up at Philly, and that's a quarterback that can run and pass as well. And this is a guy, Jayden Daniels, I think he's got more in the tank than Hurts had when he came out of school for sure. So wheels are up, man. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, and I mean, again, just love his demeanor. I think, talked about this early on when we were talking about who they might draft, and the fact that he's his father was talking to him about being like Joe Montana, Joe Cool, and I think that's the demeanor that he brings. It's that confidence, that quiet confidence, and that being comfortable. And he can spin the ball. I mean, that's evident. He can spin it, and he throws a very catchable ball. I heard Logan Paulson talk about this, right? The fact that he just throws a really good catchable ball. I just don't want to put that much pressure on the kid's back. And quite frankly, I've been hurt too much by rookie quarterbacks.
That's fair.
There's not a bigger, Robert Griffith III fan than me. I started getting bought in on Sam, even though I said I wasn't going to. Of course, when Dwayne was here, God rest his soul. So I'm just trying to be. But I'm sure by the time the season comes along, I'm going to be fully amped up for Jayden Daniels. And, exciting to see. But I think there's a few other things to talk about when it comes to OTAs.
I agree.
We get into a little bit of that.
I agree. Yeah, let's do it. So one of the big things is Jonathan Allen. This is a guy that was making a lot of headlines last year and a guy that I think kind of got forced into that leadership. Somebody's got to talk role. Right. Because we were completely devoid of leaders last year. And we saw that's not necessarily John Allen's style, right? To be that super vocal leader. But he took over. He kind of moved into that role last year, started talking a lot to the media, and seemed really upset. And he'd said, I don't want to be around for another rebuild. Right. I'm not interested in another rebuild. And when he said that, a lot of us, myself included, were, okay, the writing's on the wall. He's gone. It's time for him to go. He doesn't want to be around for another rebuild. There's no way you don't rebuild a team when they're 4-13. That calls for a rebuild almost every time, unless you have like the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes has a season-ending injury or something like that, you're gonna have a rebuild after a 4-13 year. And man, it is just really exciting to see him. He is thrilled. He seems over the moon, super happy about what's going on. Nothing but positive things to say about the new regime, and it sounds like he is fully bought in.
Yeah, he says he's super happy. He said, I'm just happy, loves the coaching staff, loves the direction of the team. He said this is literally just a dream job right now. So been some rumors running around about a possible trade with John Allen. I kind of don't believe any of that. I think he's the kind of guy they want in the building, and he's buying in, and he's had conversations with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn. So I'm not buying into the trade rumors. You never know, but I'm not buying into it, not at least for this upcoming season. And, I thought it was interesting. Another quote from him is that everybody's got something to prove. And I think that's one of the things you really like about this team is the fact that, there's this chip on their shoulders, right? John Allen did not have a great season last year. He was banged up, but he didn't have a great season. Neither did Deron Payne. And they got some competition coming in this year. So I think they're all excited about that, and it's great to see the motivation that's there. And we'll see. Hopefully it translates to the field. It'd be, Deron Payne and John Allen, that tandem, I think the two of them are greater than the sum of their parts, and it would be great for them to come back strong this season. That would be pivotal for this year. And, you're talking about rebuild. I just want to add one thought to that, and that's the fact that look at what we're doing in offensive tackle. I think that, we've heard of maybe these high free agents coming out and whether or not it'd be a good idea for them to go after one of those guys, but really depends on the price. And I think they're doing things the right way in terms of the kind of guys they're bringing in. And maybe they don't end up landing, that perfect left tackle this season. But this is about also making the right decisions for the 2025 season. So I think they're building a team that can compete this year, but not necessarily looking to try to hit a home run at every spot as they go through it. So I think it's great. I think another, great thing, and I'll turn this over to you, though, is, some of the things we're hearing with Bobby Wagner as well.
Yeah, Bobby Wagner is, for all intents and purposes, a stud. And I think it is just an absolute home run bringing him in this year. Who knows if we'll be able to keep him around after this year, if he wants to play for longer this year, whatever the case may be. But I know for certain that's a guy that is here and he has no interest in effing around.
Right.
He is here to win. He is here to do things the right way. He is here to build the right culture. And that's a guy, he's had a lot of success with Dan Quinn. You heard him talk about he actually wanted to follow Dan Quinn down to Dallas. And that didn't quite work out. It sounds like the Dallas front office wasn't on board with that, wasn't going to make that happen. Now Dan Quinn comes to Washington. Wagner's right there. And that's a guy that can just kind of instill that culture and that success and bring that continuity through. And a really cool story I have about the Bobby Wagner thing is I was watching Sam Cosmi interview, and he's talking about, hey, man, I was sitting on the offensive line, and I was about to go pull, and all of a sudden I hear Bobby yell back to the defense, he's pulling, he's pulling, he's pulling. And I went, how did you know that? And he goes, well, every time you pull, you lean this certain way.
Right.
And that is what having somebody like that in Bobby Wagner, that is what having such a smart, sharp football presence and having somebody that's just an elite player, an elite leader on the defense, that's what having somebody like that does. One, he's telling the other linebackers and he's telling the other defenders and the guys on his team, hey, when you see this guy do this, you know this is going to happen. He's cueing them into that, and maybe some of the younger guys aren't quite thinking on that level yet. They're not understanding these tells. And two, when Cosmi goes over to him and says, hey, man, how did you know I was pulling? He can explain that to him, and now Cosmi knows, okay, I have a little bit of a tell.
Right.
And I can give these kinds of things up, so I need to kind of wheel it back. So we'll see in terms of can he be that absolutely dominant force on the field. We'll just have to wait and see. But I think all in all, I am super excited for what Bobby Wagner brings here. And we got a little bit of an inside source.
We
with
do.
some positive news on Bobby as well.
Yeah, so our guy Lou Holder, who's been a guest on the pod a couple
Dear
of
friend
times,
of the podcast.
we love him. He's been out covering OTAs, and any chance you get to catch up with Lou on his socials and the coverage these guys got great highlights and some great coverage out there. He says that he just loves what Bobby Wagner is going to do for this franchise. So, I think it's exciting. He had a presser. You can check that out. And I think the thing with Bobby Wagner is that, he's just a little older than I think London Fletcher was when he started here. I know he's on a one-year deal. He doesn't necessarily feel like a one-year guy. He spent most of his career with the Seahawks, did 1 year with the Rams. I guess he's bounced around a little bit the last couple of years. But I feel like he's got a little left in the tank, and we could get a good 2-3 years out of him. We'll see.
Yeah.
But, I love the leadership that he brings. And he led the league in tackles. I know I've said that before on this pod, but he led the league in tackles. And a guy that's got an empty tank just doesn't do that. I'm sorry. So,
100%.
Maybe lost a half a step. That happens sometimes. Or sometimes when you're a vet, you can gain that half a step in being in the right spot at the right time, being able to read what the offense is going to do and through the leadership that you're going to get. And you got great athletes in Bobby and Frankie Louvu, and even Jamin Davis, who one thing that's been exciting this week is it seems that he's attacking a bit more from the edge. So we talked about the fact they were kind of working him at the mic last week. This week we've seen a little bit more on him working the edge, which I think would be pretty exciting for him. So maybe he has a bounce back season. So love what Bobby Wagner's bringing to the table. I agree with Lou on that for sure.
100%. And yeah, that's a really great point about Jamin Davis playing out on the edge. It seems like right now, this time of year, the kind of attitude that they're trying to have, nobody's unrealistic about the fact that, look, it's May, right? This is not high-level football being played right now at this time of the year. You're not hitting. You're not really – so there's only so much that can be done in terms of evaluating these guys. But now's the time to start trying out weird stuff. Put Jamin Davis on the edge. Try Emmanuel Forbes out returning kicks and returning punts. They had Emmanuel Forbes doing that because he's a fast guy. See what he's got,
Emmanuel Forbes is never going to be back there returning kicks.
I don't think that will ever be the case. But when you factor in – here's the thought process that I like. This guy set a record for pick sixes. Intercepting a ball and then returning it is not all that different from a punt return. It's a little different, but in terms of being able to see the field and the vision, hey, maybe there's a little bit of talent there. Maybe this is a guy that's been misused. Let's see. Maybe we unlock something. Maybe we put him there in that vision and something clicks. And all of a sudden, this first rounder has a little more purpose on the team now, has a little more things to kind of get him back in the good graces of the guys in the locker room and the fans and all that stuff.
Yep.
I just love the thinking. I love that they're thinking about getting a little wild, getting a little bit wacky. And I love that the veterans they selected, Zach Ertz is another one, made a spectacular catch for a touchdown. They are guys that are here, willing to teach, willing to learn, and you saw Zach Ertz. As soon as he made that touchdown catch, who do you go over to? Sinnott. And he's talking to Sinnott, and he's telling him, hey, I manipulate my body this way in this situation so that I can get the catch, and here's what I'm doing differently. All these kinds of things. He's showing, he's teaching these things. Maybe he's giving our boy Yankoff a couple tips, You don't know. Shout out to Yankoff. I got to get his jersey if he makes the 53, man. I might have to splurge on that.
Interesting. Tight ends, maybe it's a position we can touch on another pod. That's an interesting depth chart there for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
just so we don't get demonetized, that is the guy's name. That's all we're referring to. It's just his name. That's it. Look it up if you don't know. Anyways, what do you say, Pop? Shall we move on to our little 15 to 25 segment here?
You missed a segment though.
You got it. You want to talk about the segment? I think it's a pretty good segment. We should get into that.
What rookie are you most excited about other than Jayden Daniels? I do want to touch on that.
That's a good question. I mean, the easy answer would be Sanderstow, right? That'd be the easy answer. I still don't know how to say his name. But that's not the answer for me. For me, the answer is going to be Brandon Coleman.
Oh, you took mine. But that's fine. We're gonna chop it up. We'll chop it up on Brandon
Spit
Coleman.
for me then, Pop. Tell me what you're feeling on Brandon Coleman. Tell me why you're feeling that.
I'm not
the
sure
article ready.
whether he's, ready to step in right away. I don't know, but I think when you see some of the the video of him, his athleticism is incredibly impressive. They talk about how they're running drills where the offensive linemen are bouncing from side to side, and the guys that are holding the pads are having trouble keeping up with him because he's getting from one spot to the other so fast. The coaches are actually yelling at the guys to try to keep up. And I've seen him, some film of him running those drills, and he just seems to be really fast in terms of getting from one spot to the other. So his athleticism has been advertised, looks off the chart, and I just starting to get that little bit of vibe. Now it's early. It's OTAs. It's not even training camp yet of that. We might have found an actual guy that can play tackle, has the measurables to play tackle. Whether you're going to throw him in there from the jump, I'm not sure. I still kind of think it's Cornelius Lucas to start, but he's the one that I'm most excited about. We might have found something in Brandon Coleman.
And let me toss you a name here, Pop. David Bakhtiari's out there looking for a job right now.
Right.
If David Bakhtiari can get healthy.
Is he the guy from the Packers?
Yes.
Yeah.
If David Bakhtiari can get healthy and we can get him out here, I think that would be such a home run. Such a home run. Now, I don't know if he's willing to play on the right side if needed or what the situation is, but you have Luke, who's a swing tackle, right? You have Wiley there who can play guard. All of a sudden, you have so much freedom with how you're going to set up this lineup, who's going to play where. Once you get that left tackle sorted, you have Cornelius Lucas. You can move over to the right side. If we have a guard get hurt, let's say Cosme pulls a hamstring and he's out for 2 or 3 weeks, we can move Wiley into that guard spot. Let's say, who's our starting left guard right now? Is it Nick Allegretti, would you say? Chris Paul, maybe?
I think it's a competition.
One of those two guys, perhaps. Nick Allegretti, maybe it's Chris Paul, maybe it's Brandon Coleman. I think we're gonna find Brandon Coleman starting somewhere on this line.
Yeah,
that's my bold prediction. Maybe it's at the left guard spot. Maybe it's at the left tackle spot. We'll have to see. Now, are you ready for the 15 to 25?
Well, I was gonna make a point about what's this guy's from Green Bay's name.
David Bakhtiari.
Bakhtiari is that. I think the only quick point there for me is that I think he's going to cost too much. I think at the end of the day,
we've got money. Why not spend it, man?
It's not so much cost in a 1-year deal. I think he's going to want multi-years.
But we've got $100 million for next year.
But you've got to be smart about the future. And he's coming off a serious injury. I think that's the kind of thing that I'd be cool if they could sign him to a 1 or 2 year deal. And I agree with everything you said related to what that could do for the team. But I don't think this front office is looking for that splash signing. I think they're looking to be smart and make sure they're building for 2-3 years down the road.
I think at such a premium position like left tackle, if he was in the market for a multi-year deal coming off an injury like that, he would have got one by now.
$5 bet. I say we don't sign him.
I'm not betting that we do sign him. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying I don't think he's signing a multi-year expensive deal at this point in his career.
And if you can get him for something that's reasonable, then I'm all for it.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. NFL news and notes for our 15 to 25 here. Pop. Dan Campbell is talking Super Bowl for the Detroit Lions.
Are you buying it?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, I'm buying it. They, by all intents and purposes,
Ben Johnson.
They should have made it to the Super Bowl last year. They were right there. Let's not forget, they were up, 24-8 on the 49ers at halftime, and it was a young team that wasn't ready for the moment. That's what it was. It was a young team, not ready for the moment, completely folded. They died. It was a young coach. I know Dan Campbell's not a young man necessarily, but it was a young coach that wasn't ready for the moment either. He died by his, I'm not going to kick the field goal. They end up losing by 2 points. If he kicked the field goal, would have been in a different situation. Died on that cross. So be it. You know what? You want to be the crazy aggressive coach that makes all the silly plays? You can watch the Super Bowl from home just like the rest of us. Now, an offseason to decompress. I think they should be thinking Super Bowl or bust in Detroit, personally.
So there's two parts of this question with Dan Campbell, and then I think we're going to get into who we think the favorites are in each conference, right?
Sure.
But I think Dan Campbell, parts of it. Do I think Detroit is a contender? Yeah, I do. I mean, they made it to the NFC Championship game. Like you said, they were close. The way they played the 49ers, they got a really good offensive squad. I do like Jared Goff a lot running that team. They got talented weapons on offense for sure. They've got a good, solid defense. So I think they're definitely a contending team. I think they would fall in that top 2 or 3 in the NFC East when we start talking about that. Or in the NFC, sorry, not the NFC East.
Yep.
But the question is it right for Dan Campbell to put it out there that he thinks that it's kind of, he said, he stopped short of saying Super Bowl or bust, but he pretty much put it out there that the measuring stick of success for that team this year is Super Bowl. Is that the right thing for a coach to do?
Absolutely. What are we doing this for?
Fair.
What are we doing this for? If I walk in, I'm a music producer and a recording engineer. If I walk into the studio with the artist and I say, hey, let's just make a decent song today. Let's just make something we don't hate.
Right.
I'm never getting called again. No, you walk into the studio and you say, we're making your hit today.
I like that.
We are going to make you $1 million today. Today is the day we look back and talk about and say, we made the record.
He could do it, by the way.
Absolutely. Does it happen every time? No, but that's the expectation you got to have when you got that kind of talent at your disposal. And they have that kind of talent in Detroit. They should be, if he was to walk up there and say, I'd be happy if we just won the division and then, maybe we lost in the second round of the playoffs, or maybe we get a bye and we lose, something like that. He should be fired on the spot, and every single one of his players should request a trade. You got to go into an NFL football season. Playing football is a little bit of a crazy thing to do. You got to be a little crazy to succeed in that world. You got to go into that football season a little crazy. You got to go into that football season going, let's go win the Super Bowl. If you don't go into the season believing you can win a Super Bowl with a team like Detroit, you got something wrong with you.
It's the anti Joe Gibbs, Bill Belichick, two of the greats out there approach, right? They were always kind of talking about, I think behind closed doors they were talking Super Bowl to their teams. But I think in front of the press, they were kind of like, we're the worst team in football kind of thing. We got so much to work on. It was really our opponents are so great. So it's interesting, but I kind of like it too. But who would you put up there in the NFC with Detroit as your top 2, top 3 teams? Are we running it back with San Francisco? Who else is in the mix there with those 2 teams if you were going to pick a little bit of a dark horse that you think it could be a surprise in the NFC this year?
I like Detroit. I like San Francisco. I like Philly. That's probably my top 3. And then if I got to pick a dark horse, I'm going with the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah,
that's my dark horse.
Packers are an interesting choice for sure.
Going with the Green Bay Packers as a dark horse.
How about my LA Rams? We're out in LA here.
Rams is not a bad pick either.
We were at SoFi Stadium earlier today just checking it out, and we had a great I'd love to give him a shout out, but great talk, very friendly security guard there. Wouldn't let us in the building, but was very friendly and talking to us.
Missed out on his 15 minutes
big Rams
of fame.
fan, but I think the Rams are climbing back up too. But yeah, I like those picks. I'm not really that excited beyond the Lions. I don't know. The Eagles, there's just something there, that I just not convinced that they're going to be able to bounce back. I think Sirianni lost that team a little bit last year, and I'm not sure he's going to be able to get him back. Hate me in the comments, Eagles fans, but I think it's a runoff between the Niners and the Lions again. I think they're going to run it back.
I think as long as our paisan Dom DeStefano is on the sidelines for the Eagles, I think as long as Big Dom is there, I think they'll be fine.
How about in the AFC real quick?
Can we stop ignoring that the Eagles added Saquon Barkley? Can we stop ignoring that? That's going to matter. That's really important. That's an all-pro football player. Come on. When Saquon's healthy, Saquon is unstoppable. As long as he stays healthy, they're going to be serious trouble.
Well, speaking of teams, look at this segue. Speaking of teams that added all-star running backs to the mix, what about your Baltimore Ravens in the AFC? Are they a contender for the big spot there? The team that you don't want to go see. You know, we're trying to convince Dominic to go to Ravens Stadium, to go to an M&T Bank, and let's go see the Commanders match up against the Ravens, a classic measuring stick game. I think it's in week 4-ish of next season. Dominic doesn't want to do it because he's worried about that game. But what do you think of the Ravens? Are they a contender in the AFC next year? They finally break through.
Absolutely. They got to be.
Lamar break through.
They got to be. They got to be I'd say they're definitely a contender. I think obviously at this point, Kansas City Chiefs, until proven otherwise, are the best team in football.
Yeah, and don't count them out.
You can't expect anything else. I expect they go to the Super Bowl again next year. I expect they win the Super Bowl. You can't expect anything else out of that team at this point. Somebody could get them. I think the Ravens have all the talent. I have a lot of questions about losing Michael McDonald. I'm going to have to see.
But they've been through so many. I hear that so much.
I'm going to have
to
see.
So many D coordinators that have been really good. Don't you think they can reload?
Their defense was a big question mark before they added McDonald. I don't know.
I think they have more talent.
I don't know.
Than people expect.
And they lost Anthony Weaver as well, their assistant head coach and defensive line coach. There's a lot of turnover right now in Baltimore. So I'm interested to see what happens there. That's why, for me, I'm not picking them to be the Super Bowl champion. That's the big thing that's slowing me down on that. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm saying I got to see it before I'm willing to get there. And I might be on here 3 weeks in. I might be on here 3 weeks into the podcast saying, yeah, they're fine. I was overreacting. It's all good.
What do you think of not necessarily as a top contender, but just an interesting comment? So we know we got the Chiefs, we got the Ravens. But what do you think about the Jets? Did the Jets bounce back this year? Aaron Rodgers, 40 years old, got a lot to prove. Wouldn't put him up there at the top for sure, but do you think they can make a playoff run?
It's just too many question marks on the Jets for me right now to put them. I think, sure. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's a playoff game and you've got Aaron Rodgers on your team,
you think he's still got
left
left in the tank?
Pretty good, right?
Is he the Aaron Rodgers or even 90% of the Aaron Rodgers we know?
Have to see. I think so. I think he definitely I think he has whatever is left in the tank because, yes, he tore his Achilles, but that's a whole season of hits that he didn't take.
He had some interesting quotes this week about having to prove himself and understanding where he is in his career and knowing that, hey, if we don't have a successful season, that's probably it. So I think he's definitely got the right mentality to bring it this year. But I don't know. You're right. It's a big question mark.
Yeah,
it's a big wait and see.
I got the Ravens, I got the Chiefs, and I got the Bengals. Bengals won 9 games without Joe Burrow last year. If Joe Burrow's
healthy, can he stay healthy?
Now, here's the big question mark. That wrist injury that Joe Burrow has is scary. That's a really scary wrist injury. Look more into it. There has literally never been an NFL quarterback to have that injury. It's only been baseball pitchers, from what I understand, and those pitchers never come back the same. So that's scary, honestly. Yeah. But if Burrow can come back healthy, which I'm going to put my money on he does, he's a young man, he's a hard worker, and I'm just a Burrow fan in general. I really love Joe Burrow. If he comes back healthy, I might put the Bengals even above the Ravens in terms of contention for next year.
That hurts our insider for sure. I mean, that's a hell of a division. That's got to be the best division in football,
without a doubt.
But you still got the Browns too. You could argue talent wise with that defense is a pretty good team. I know we've got question marks at quarterback, but that team played really well last season.
Yeah,
the Steelers are the Steelers, right?
Yeah, it's just my issue with Cleveland. What I'm afraid of is that is Chubb. Can he come back and be what he was? Because when he's gone and you don't have Watson firing at full cylinders, that offense is pretty anemic.
And you got the Bills and the Texans in the AFC too.
Yeah, Texans are a team to look out for. I think I would have my money on the Texans taking a step forward and making a playoff run ahead of the Jets, for sure. I like that bet a lot. I'd say the Texans will be my dark horse, and my top 3 is going to be the Chiefs, of course, big gap, and then Ravens, Bengals next to that.
So, I like it. How do you think our boys do in the NFC East. How do you think they stack up? I don't want to make predictions in terms of where things go, but I think the NFC East is an interesting situation, right?
Yeah.
I do think there are question marks with each of the teams. And if you look at the Commanders, they've got nowhere really to go but up, right? So I think people understand this is kind of a rebuild year. They're not very high expectations. There's just a little bit of a wait-and-see attitude there. There's not a ton of pressure on this team. And I do think this team could surprise some people this season. I really do. But you look at the Giants, you look at the Cowboys, and you look at the Eagles. In my mind, I know you think you disagree with me on the Eagles, and I do think they are still the strongest team. But there's question marks about whether these teams have really improved themselves this offseason. And they've all had challenges, I say going into the offseason. Giants had an extremely disappointing year, despite the fact that they swept us. But everybody in the division did. Eagles kind of really swooned at the end. I think there's question marks with coaching. I think there's question marks at quarterback, quite honestly. Although he was banged up, I'm a Jalen Hurts fan myself. You got Dak Prescott on the last year of his contract. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of confidence being given there. And the Cowboys had one of the quietest off seasons of any team in the NFL.
And they lost their defensive mastermind. And they lost their defensive mastermind, Dan Quinn. They lost their starting center. They lost a couple key players. They lost the defensive linemen to us.
So what's your general vibe about the NFC East?
I think
and our chances there.
I tipped my hand a little bit with how I jumped in on the Cowboys, but I think if there is going to be a team to fall apart, in my opinion, it is going to be the Cowboys. And you look at, they lost Tony Pollard last year. He couldn't quite get it together. Pollard's in Tennessee now. They lost Ezekiel Elliott to the Patriots. Obviously, Zeke's not what he used to be. There's a massive absence of a running game in Dallas there right now.
Well, they got Zeke back now. You know that.
What did he do last year in New England?
Exactly.
I mean, great, but he's not. When Dak was
that was a strange re-signing.
When Dak was at his best, they were running that route.
Well, and Zeke was fading in Dallas, right? His last couple of years in Dallas weren't great. And he was okay in New England. He was kind of that solid vet, typically what you'd expect. But, yeah, that being their big free agent signing was odd. I hope you're right. I almost want a moment of silence right now. Bow our heads and pray that your prediction, the Cowboys falling apart this season, comes true. I just think it's interesting what's going on in the division. And I think if there's a chance for us to make a little bit of, headway, can we finish second? Do you think we can finish second?
I mean, if the Cowboys
probably behind the Eagles,
if the Cowboys come unraveled, maybe. But I think for us, where we're putting ourselves in that 7 to 9 win category, I think the only way you finish second is if the Eagles or the Cowboys really kind of come apart at the seams.
But you think favorable schedule? I think massive upgrade in coaching. They brought up an all-star coaching staff. And you talk about people that have things to prove. And, I know there's been a little bit of Dan Quinn hatred out there. People have talked about how he's already on the hot seat, kind of crazy out there in the ESPN world this week. But, I think that the coaching staff, Cliff Kingsbury, Joe Witt Jr., and that group is going to coach this group up. And I think that they're going to be playing a little bit with house money this year. And I think also sometimes I really like the upgrades on defense. And I think sometimes when you get smart on offense and you understand, you emphasize running game, you want to take the pressure off that rookie QB, sometimes that leads to really good things. You start to play kind of winning football rather than, dropping a quarterback back 52 straight times or some craziness like that.
So, where did we hear that one before? I don't know. We'll just have to see. I think we'll be competitive in the division for sure, but I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think this is the year to be like, we're contending to win the NFC East. I don't think that's the case. I think we are fighting for a wild card spot, and I think there is a realistic world where 9-8 still gets you into the playoffs, but you finish third in the NFC East. In this division, when all teams are firing on all cylinders, this is one of the best divisions in football.
Yeah.
The Eagles and the Cowboys are two stud teams in the NFC. I think...
And you can't really count the Giants out. I mean, that was a playoff team just a year prior or contending for the playoffs. I think that they're a better team than they showed last year. I do think that's true.
I think losing Saquon.
Quarterback is a concern.
Quarterback's a concern. And then you say, okay, well, they might move on from Daniel Jones. Okay, what, Drew Lock? Are we afraid of Drew Lock? I'm not afraid of Drew Lock. I'm okay. I'm not too worried about that.
No, yeah.
So you move on from quarterback.
Daniel Jones is the commander killer.
And okay, so who are the two positions that start with the football in their hand on the offense? It's either the quarterback making the play or the running back making the play. You move on to running back, they lost.
Yeah.
They lost.
There's trouble there.
Saquon Barkley.
There's trouble
So
there.
I'm not too concerned about the Giants, to be honest with you. I think this is my boy Brian Daboll's swan song. I think this is his final year, and I think that Giants.
He'd love you some Daboll.
Love me some Daboll, man. I think he's a good coach. It's a bad situation, but I think the Giants are done for. I think maybe 5
Does Tommy
wins.
Cutlets make the roster this year?
Better.
Too much Giants talk. For
Anti-Italian discrimination if he doesn't.
For this podcast. How about a little bit of stadium talk before we wrap this thing up?
Why not?
Just quick hitter.
It wouldn't be the Commanders podcast if we didn't talk about a little something off the field. We got to talk a little bit something other than football, right?
We've been doing pretty good lately.
So
with that, but.
we were at SoFi today. We were just we're in the South LA area looking for some
that's a
time to
good point.
kill, right? And so we go to check
Beautiful
out SoFi,
spot.
and it is just gorgeous. And
It
I'm
is.
talking to my dad, and I'm saying, Pop, like, you look at something like this, no wonder people say FedEx is a dump. And you and I have gone on record and said, hey, you know what? The experience at FedEx ain't all that bad.
No, it's not that bad.
It's still, you're still going to a professional football game. It's still fun, right? But you go to the Raiders stadium, you go to this stadium now, it's at SoFi in LA, and you go, oh, wow, that's really how good it can be.
But
Things
there
have
aren't many
evolved, you know?
stadiums. Let's face it. I mean, there's Jerry World, there's SoFi, and I think there's, maybe you could say, we always Allegiant. We don't know how to call what we don't know how to call the stadium in Vegas.
Right off the strip.
That's real nice. But I mean, there's a handful of like those elite stadiums, and there's
Yeah.
kind of everybody else. But I do think Josh Harrison Group, when they build this thing, I do think it's going to be in that elite group.
For sure.
I don't know if you can match Jerry World. We've never been there. At some point, we'll make a run there. SoFi is amazing. I think it's the nicest stadium I've ever personally been to. But I think we're going to get it right on the stadium. But there's a couple questions we want to explore just real quick. Going back to RFK, there's some major hurdles to get over there, right? There's it's got to get passed by Congress. We think that'll happen. But then it's got to get passed by D.C. government to approve it as well. And do they have the money to do it after the deal that they cut on the Wizards and the Caps? And that's a big hurdle they got to overcome. I think Josh Harris is willing to go into his pockets and fund most of it, but he's going to need some help. Can they figure that out? And will that even happen in time? Or is it a return to Landover in the FedEx spot? And how, do we really care?
No, I don't care. Because here's the thing. I think RFK is dope. I think that is the one seed. That's got to be the one seed for anybody who bleeds burgundy and gold like you and I. RFK has got to be the one seed, right? Just the history, having the team actually in Washington, D.C., in the city is so awesome.
All our major sports teams would be in D.C. at that point.
Yeah, and how cool is that? And I go on and on to all my West Coast friends about how much I love D.C., what a great city D.C. is. A lot of people haven't been. A lot of people really only see it for the politics. But to have some more things going on there, I think would be spectacular. I'd be all for that. But at the 2 seed, for me, you've got all that land in Landover. I said to Pop today when we were at SoFi, I said, Pop, you can't do this at RFK.
Right.
The big pond, the whole complex,
Waterfall.
the YouTube theater next to it, all these things. You can't do that at RFK. You just don't have the space. The big, wide open feeling that SoFi has that's so great, you can't create that there. You can do it in Landover.
And I mean, if you think of Inglewood, California, like there's not much else around, but that that experience I created with that stadium and the surroundings around it is pretty amazing. You feel like you're in another world. So you can kind of do that anywhere if you've got the space. And I personally got a soft spot in my heart for Landover. It's not far from where I grew up. It's PG County. I know it means a lot to the people there. To me, if it can't be RFK, I'm actually okay with it being in Landover. Of course, we all would prefer the RFK site. I think there's a lot of great things you can do with that site as well. It's waterfront, territory there in the Anacostia that I think you could do some good things with the RFK spot. But it's going to be a challenge. Now, do you go dome or no dome?
Got to go dome. And
I'm kind of an outdoor stadium guy myself.
You're saying you're an outdoor stadium guy.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be some kind of retractable roof dome situation.
Got to be a grass field. Can we agree on that?
Yeah,
got to be a grass field.
Sure, got to be a grass field. But here's the deal. You're not building a multi-billion-dollar stadium like this without we're going to get a Super Bowl here. That's the whole point. They're building the stadium so they can get the Super Bowl there, so they can host the Super Bowl, so they can become like Arizona, like Minnesota, like Dallas, where they're in that regular rotation of the Super Bowls at these places, New Orleans, Atlanta, these kind of places that you figure the Super Bowl is going to be at, right? They're building a dome. There's no two ways around it.
If you're able to do what they do in Vegas, where they're able to roll the field out and in, and then you could make it a multi-purpose facility year-round, concerts, things like that. But I would love to see, maybe a bit of a personal thing, also keep ourselves in play for international soccer. And if you do that, you got to have a grass field. And I just want a grass field in general. I just think turf is just bad for the players.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm not a sports scientist. I don't know too much about it. But anyways, Pop, before we get into the agriculture breakdown, what do you say we wrap this thing up?
I think we should wrap it up.
Guys, if you've been with us this long, you're clearly enjoying it. Subscribe to the channel. And don't just subscribe for free. Go get your raffle ticket. Subscribe to the channel. Send the email, domandpopgiveaway1@gmail.com. Is that it?
Yep.
Look at the boy with the memory.
It'll be in the comments.
It'll be in the pinned comment if you want to check that out. Enter to win Jayden Daniels jersey. And now, before it's too late, we might have 500 subs next week, and we got to cut you guys off. So you got to enter before we hit that 500 mark. Guys.
Why is it every time I have this mic in my hand, I just want to spin some Lou Rawls?
Give it to him, Pop. Sing us out.
You'll never find another love like mine. For those of you know, you know.
There it is. Let's wrap this thing up without further ado. Up and down.
This is Pop.
Thanks for watching, everybody.